Well, Coasters, it's Bruce here, and today I'm in Westport, and I'm with an old badminton colleague of mine, Royce Smith. And Royce, in a week or so, is going to be 90 years old. You're looking in great nick, Royce. Now tell me, what's your full name?
Royce Alfred Smith.
Where did the Alfred come from?
I have no idea. I don't broadcast it very much.
Where were you born?
I was born in Kongahu at Karamea. That's where the midwife was at Kongahu, and my home was in Arapito, in the Arapito Valley. But there was no maternity home or anything like that out there, so you just went to the first farmhouse that, you know, was pretty good with cattle.
Yeah, so they managed to deliver it no trouble at all. They managed to deliver you no trouble, you know, when you were born.
Yes, yes. I was born on the 10th of June 1931.
Right.
Yeah, and that, by the way, that is the same day as the Duke of Edinburgh's, but the Duke of Edinburgh is 10 years older, so he'll be 100 in June when I'm 90.
Oh, look.
But he's had an easier life than me, I think. But that's my age anyway.
And so you were born in Karamea. Who were your mum and dad?
My mum was May James, Florence May James, before she was married, and my father was Clifford Edison Smith. He came from England, and my mother came from Wales, hence the height and the app.
I think that might have happened with my mother as well, except she came from
Oh, yes,
from
your
Ireland.
mother spent a lot of time in these shares here.
She did, didn't she?
Oh, yes.
She did. So, how many brothers and sisters did you have? Did you have any brothers and sisters?
Yes, I had two brothers.
Yeah.
One died fairly early. The youngest brother, his name was Edison. That's where the Clifford Edison came from.
Right.
And he died with a liver problem, yet he never drank or smoked. And Cliff is still alive, my brother. He's a year younger than me, and he lives out by the Irrawaddy River. And I've got two daughters, Jennifer and
same name.
And Rosalie. Rosalie's in Christchurch, and Jennifer's a real estate agent in Auckland.
Oh, fantastic.
So Rosalie was here, she's working at New World, but now she's working in New World. There's a new place at Wigram apparently, and she's working there.
Wow.
So that's my family.
What did your dad do for a living? How did he make his living? Your dad.
Pardon?
How did your dad earn his living? Was he a bushman or was he a farmer?
No,
what was he?
No, he worked in what they call the Public Works Department.
Right.
He worked in the rock, mainly in the rock quarry out at Karamea when they were doing all the harbour work, all the river works and so on. That was his main job. But we did have a little bit of a farm in the bottom end of Arapito. But he actually was on the lookout station at they had the lookout station during the war.
Yes.
He was the corporal at Maori Point.
Wow.
And we had to more or less run the farm ourselves because he got taken away actually to Burnham or one of the military camps too during the war. Yeah.
Where was your first home? Can you remember? When Mum bought you home after you were born?
Our first home.
Yeah, where was that?
In the lower end of Arapito. It was the first house when you enter the township or the village of Arapito, and it now belongs to Ross Scarlet, of course, because he owns all the bottom end of the valley, and we looked after it. We had about 6 or 8 cows, and we milked those, before school and after school, because Dad wasn't there a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And we stayed there until during the it was during the war. We shifted further up the valley, and we did that ourselves. We shifted up the brother and myself and Mum. We borrowed a horse and dray, and we shifted
the whole house.
Our family up the valley further.
Wow. Royce, what did you do for fun when you were kids out there?
What did I do?
What did you do for fun?
For fun?
Yeah, what did you...
No, never a dull moment. There was always plenty to do in Karamea. So there was always... I didn't play a lot of sport. I did play rugby.
Yeah.
And played badminton that in Karamea too.
And you weren't too bad, if I remember rightly.
But we did a lot of outdoor work. You know, there was nothing to stay inside for in those days. There was nothing like. We had no power and no tar seal when I left Karamea in 1954. There was we were still using candles and milk machine engines and whatnot.
Wow.
Yeah, so the tar seal didn't come till about the power didn't come till about 1967, I think.
It was late. It was very late, wasn't it?
It was
It was.
that.
So, did you have a nickname when you were growing up?
Did I?
Did you have a nickname?
No.
Always
No,
just
I was,
always been Royce?
No. Oh, in the army they called me Smithy in the army.
Yeah.
And some of the guys,
Yeah.
but no, I didn't really have a nickname at Karamea. Not at school or no, I didn't.
So, where did you go to primary school?
I went to primary school in Arapito, and
So it had a school there.
yes, we had a school in Arapito. We had just under 20. Arapito, a lot of farmers in Arapito at that time, but it's amalgamated now.
Yeah.
I think from memory there were about 11 or 12 farms, and of course there were some pretty well-known people in the valley, because my first cousin lived, when we moved up the valley,
Yeah.
he lived right next to me, who was Len Chambers.
Oh, gosh.
And he was the dam buster, and of course he spent hours at our place rattling away because Dad worked in the post office too, and he was good at Morse code. So Len Chambers learnt the Morse code from Dad. They rattled away from ours, and then he was the chief radio operator on the dam busters raid.
On the aircraft.
Yeah.
They were Lancasters, weren't they? Were they Lancasters they were in? What sort of aircraft was he in?
The Lancaster.
The big Lancaster bomber.
Yeah. Is it all right?
Yeah, no.
And of course, Les Scarlet lived in the next farm. Uncle Les Scarlet. This is the funny part about it. In those days, they called the father and the son were called a similar name. So Len's father was Len Chambers, but we called Lenny to differentiate. Uncle Les's son was Uncle Les Scarlet. His son was Leslie Scarlet.
Yeah.
But that's what we called him, Leslie, to differentiate. And Les got killed in Bougainville on must have been nearly Christmas Day, I think, in about 1944. So he got killed, and so did the other Scarlet from Karamea, Theo Scarlet. He got killed too both in Bougainville. They're both now buried in Burrail, is it? New Caledonia,
yes.
the Walgrave Cemetery.
Theo
was actually taken. He wasn't found for years. For years later, the Americans, when they go around looking for him, they dug them up, and they thought they were Americans because they were in an American plane, and they took him back to America, or took him to, might have been Singapore, one of their bases. Then they found out that his DNA was New Zealand. He was a New Zealander. So they brought the remains back to New Zealand and took them over to Burrail and buried him with the other Les.
Wow. When you were at school, did you like reading? When you were at primary school, did you read books?
Well, no, I didn't really have time to do much like that, Bruce. Looking after the farm and that. No, we didn't have enough money to buy anything like that. No, I didn't do a lot of reading.
Yeah.
We had good teachers. We had very good teachers. And then when primary school, when I got to standard 5 or 6, they amalgamated. Well, they didn't amalgamate. They started the high school again at Karamea. The high school had been dead for years.
Yeah.
So 2 exclusive brethren girls and myself went from the Arapito school, and we helped start the Karamea District High School.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Can you remember the names of any of the teachers at primary school? Yeah, I mean, I don't. Can you remember who you went to school with? Any of the names?
Oh yes, of course I can. And most, of course, we lived in Arapito with the exclusive brethren.
Yeah.
And they were very strong out there, and we had to live together.
Yeah.
Our neighbours across the road were exclusive brethren, and then I went to school with 3 of them, Berner and Lois and Mervyn. And Mervyn was my actual classmate. He was exclusive brethren. Oh, we had quite a mix. We had some from there were two families from other schools came there too, because they had a bit of a difference with the Karamea school or something like that, you know.
Small
but
towns.
We knew everybody.
Wow.
We had to. We just lived like a family.
So when the school merged, did you go to high school at Karamea?
Yeah, I went to high school, and when we got down there, the teacher had us a bit of the Arapito teacher. He was really clever. His name was Olaf Rasmussen. He's actually Ray Douglas, who you probably know. He married Ray Douglas's father's sister.
Ray Douglas's father's.
Olaf Rasmussen,
okay.
his name was.
Yeah.
And he was. And so the first 6 months we were at high school, we more or less did gardening and a lot of cleaning up while the others sort of caught up. But no. No, I enjoyed schoolwork. Oh, well, I wouldn't say I was all that terribly brilliant, but no, I enjoyed it.
And Ray's still around? Ray Douglas?
Ray?
Yeah, still around? Still alive?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still alive.
Ray?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know. He's a good cobbler of mine. He's on there all the time.
I know.
He lives where I spent all my boyhood days at Johnson's at the end of the bridge. Ray lives there now.
Does he?
Yeah.
Where all those...
the Karamea Bridge. Hey, he was... oh, you'd know Ray, of course.
Yes, I do. Yeah. Did you have a subject at high school that you liked?
Well, I liked most of it. I wasn't all that good at mathematics. But of course, I finished up being a bit of an engineer, I suppose you'd say.
Oh, you're definitely an engineer. So, definitely an engineer. And did you have a favourite teacher?
Yes.
Who was that?
Olaf Rasmussen, without a doubt. He was strict. But he didn't whack her. He was good. He did it a different way. He had a different way of teaching. He was stern, but he was more fatherly or parently like. You know?
Yeah.
He was a great guy. And it made it. No, they were all pretty good though. All our teachers were pretty good.
Yeah, mate. Yeah. So you played rugby. And
yes, I played rugby at Karamea.
Yeah, and you played. You know, I know throughout your life you've played badminton.
Played rugby, played hockey. Played hockey with we played, mate, had to play with the girls mainly. Hockey was very strong in Karamea, the girls' hockey.
Was it?
Men wasn't, but we mixed with the girls. Oh yes, there was some really top players came out of Karamea. I think Yvonne Richardson actually played for New Zealand.
Yeah, some good players.
Yeah, so there were some good players.
Now, when you were at school, did you ever go fishing?
Oh yes, fishing mad.
What'd you catch? There's no fish up in Karamea, is it?
Flounder, snapper. No, that's where we spent most of our time fishing. And the other thing was too, when we were old enough to get down there and get flounders, there was food. We had to get food. After the war, things were pretty tough during the war, and after the war, we lived pretty tough. We lived very rugged because the things were rationed. And of course, when I left school, I went to the co-op store and I ran into all that. It was still rationed, and then we ran into this blackouting problem. That was terrible because every night, and we had a big old house. Every night the windows had to be blacked out with the special blackout paper that you probably know about that anyway.
I've only read about it.
Yeah, special blackout paper.
Yeah.
And then at night time we had to do a bit of black marketing and churn some butter and stuff like that. That was supposed to have gone in the cream can, but no, it was pretty tough. And I used to go shooting. I was shooting very young. We'd shoot one deer, and if you saw two or three, you didn't shoot the others. You left them for later on.
So you probably didn't have a refrigerator. Did you have a fridge back then?
Have a
refrigerator? You know, to put
no. There's no power.
How did you keep the meat?
There was no power when I left Karamea. No, we just you hung your meat you hung it up.
Yep.
In a safe, and you put it up high so the flies wouldn't get it. But you had to, if you got a deer, you took the meat that you're going to use off it and processed it, cooked it. Mum would cook it pretty quick.
Yeah. And
you keep it that way. No, there was no refrigerator. We didn't even have a radio for a long time.
How big a snapper have you seen up in Karamea?
Oh, good ones. Karamea is good for fish. And there was a lot of feed around in those days, especially in the estuary, the Otamahana estuary, that was full of flounder, and there was a lot of pippies there then. They've gone. It was like that here too, of course, in Westbrook, but Karamea was good. And out the North Beach, out the Kongahu way and out there, anywhere along those beaches, Still is.
Did you ever fish off Scott's Beach there?
Yes, plenty of times.
Dad took me
we
there.
always went there, and you'd only be there a little while. You'd have 10 or 12 snapper, and that was enough. So we'd fillet them. We never ever carried them the fish home.
Yeah.
We filleted them over there and just carried the fillets back. Yes, we were just talking about that the other day. No, there was plenty of fish there. Did you know Scott's Rock?
Yes, I do. And my dad and Terry Lynham when I was little fella.
Oh, yeah, well, I had a fair bit to do with him too when I was in the Aero Club, of course.
And we went out there, and I remember there was snapper sitting on the logs with their eyes pecked out by the seagulls, but they'd been too big to carry. The people had more than they could carry, and they left them there. Yeah. And but they were big fish.
Yeah, well, the fish were big along there because they were well fed, and no, they were big, all right. And there was good crayfish there too. But further on from the Scott's Rock, there's what they call the Crayfish Point, and there were good crayfish there too. But the sea, difficult getting the sea calm enough. Big sea, you know that big seas along the beach there.
Yep.
So, no, we were never short of fish.
So as a family, you'd have fresh venison, fish. Did you have a garden?
And vegetables and fruit. We had big fruit trees. Fruit grew like any fruit. You could grow any fruit in Arapito. And we had plenty of fruit, plenty of garden. Yes, we had plenty. You didn't buy a lot, only the essentials. Yeah.
And when did your dad come back? After the war, was it? When did your dad come home?
Yeah, after the war. It was when he came back after the war that he went out into the quarry to work. Yeah. To work then, and because that's when they were doing the rock work. Yes, that was after the war. They didn't need the lookout station there anymore then either.
So, what would one of your mates? How would they have described you when you were at school? Were you a cheeky bugger, or were you quiet, or were you?
No, it was rather different, Bruce. We were more or less like one big family. No, you treated, because the district was so small. You more or less did a lot of things, even though the region didn't come into it really. So we more or less we got on just as a family. Yeah.
When you were growing up, what did you want to be? Did you have something you wanted to?
Well, I was keen on flying because of Len and the others being in there, and I learnt to fly. I joined the Aero Club, but I did a lot of flying because I was only 14. Everything started young. I was driving a truck when I was 11 or 12, and I had to.
So what were you flying, a Tiger Moth or what?
Yeah, the Tiger Moth. Yeah. 3 Tiger Moths from the West Coast United Aero Club, and I did quite a bit of flying before I was allowed to before they gave me a logbook to record it, because I was too young. I was only 14 or 15 or something when I was playing around with the thing, but I was never very good at it, I don't think.
And you had no trouble with the plane?
Pardon?
You didn't get any scares in the plane? You didn't dump it on the beach or crash it, or?
No. I never had any problems like that, but that's what ended the Aero Club, of course, was the crashes. Yeah. Because one crashed on the glaciers, A and B crashed on the glaciers, and they weren't killed, but I knew those jokers well. And then it was only a short time after that my boss, I was working at the sawmill then, I'd left the co-op store and was working at the sawmill. He had a bit of a mishap and hit the fence and knocked the wheel off and cartwheeled the aeroplane, and that rode another one off. So it left them with one aeroplane, so they didn't have enough money to fix it up. So it went bung. But I did do a bit of flying when I moved to Westport here to live too, with the instructor I had here was Thelma John, and she married Arthur Bradshaw, who flew the Proctor out from England.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and he landed at Karamea, Arthur Brad, but I'm not sure that was when he was on his way over from Australia or not. He wasn't allowed to bring his wife over from Australia with him, and I think she might have hooked onto something over there while he came. Because
she had a tough
he
world.
married Thelma John, the Nelson Air Club instructor.
I remember my dad taking me in, I think it was ALP.
ALP, AJQ and A&D were the 3 aircraft. And I think your father used to fly ALP quite a bit. Yeah. He flew ALP up there. when they came up from Greymouth and Westport, they usually brought somebody with them, or the likes of your dad. He was a pilot, but he brought a learner pilot with him, somebody doing the cross country. Tom Menzies was the local. He was a Spitfire pilot during the war, and Berwick Delcombe, Ray Douglas knows all these well because Ray was in a control tower. Berwick Delcombe, great big fellow. He was these were war pilots, you see. He was a mosquito pilot during the war.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they were the sort of guys. Well, your dad had service too.
Yeah,
He'd been overseas.
Yeah.
So the flying was quite interesting. Getting there was a problem because we only had push bikes until we could earn enough money to get a motorbike and then a car and so on. Yeah. So I worked in the car. As I said, when I left school, I worked in the shop.
When did you retire?
Pardon?
How long ago did you retire?
Retire?
Yeah.
Well, I haven't retired him.
Yeah, well, that's what someone told me that. They reckon.
No, I retired. No, I really haven't. What do you mean? Right at the end of my working day?
Yeah. When did you hang up your hat and go, I'm going to go home to Phyllis and I'm going to dig the garden and do all that sort of thing? When did you do that?
Well, I didn't drink, but I wasn't a drinker.
Yeah.
And I gave smoking up when I went very early on. The first time, actually, when I went to school.
Right.
That sick, I never ever touched it again.
Yeah.
No. But I saw it killed my father, actually. That and the rock dust from the quarry.
Yeah, it was horrible stuff.
Oh, he died at 77, I think. Mind you, people were dying young then. We're living a lot older now.
Yeah, that's very true. Now, when did you first start dating? When did you have your first date? Well, what happened? I left school, went to the Karamea co-op store to work for about 2 years, and that was the hardest work I ever did because most of our goods at that time weren't coming over the hill. They were coming by boat, the Tiaro, into Little Wanganui. Wow.
And we had to cart everything up from down there, and I was never very big, and sacks of wheat and sacks of flour and all that sort of thing, very heavy to handle. Drums of fuel, kerosene, and all that sort of thing came in boxes and tins. Yeah. And the diesel for the milk machine engines that came in drums.
In 44-gallon drums.
In 44-gallon drums. Yeah. Every farmer had a 44-gallon drum of diesel, and when that finished, you had to. And then when we got them up to the store, the stuff from the wharf, we had to handle it again to dispatch it. So that was the heaviest work I ever did, far heavier than the sawmill. But the money wasn't very good. My first paycheck at the co-op store was £16, and that was for 1 month, not a fortnight. That was 1 month's wages.
£16.
And I had 2 of them saved up at one part of it, but then. My brother Cliff went to work at the sawmill at the top end of Umri, and he was getting big money, and I was only getting peanuts. And then I decided to go up there, so I went up there and I started on the log truck, and then I went on the timber truck for about 4 or 5 years, carting to Westport. We're getting back to the dating part. Then when I was carting timber to Westport, I met Phyllis through the. Where was she working? The bank.
And who were
she was working in the bank in Westport.
And who were Phyllis's mum and dad? What was her mum and dad's name?
Her mum and dad, they were pals.
Oh, yeah. From Karamea?
From the pal families, yes. No, from Westport.
Oh.
Yeah, from Westport.
Oh, wow.
Yes. We could go on for hours, couldn't we? Yes, Baden Powell got killed at the mill. There was about 3 or 4 people got killed while I was working at it. This was when I'd moved. Oh, I'm jumping away.
No, you're right.
Yes,
you're right.
But but you're asking about Phyllis. Well, yes, he was Baden Powell. His brother was Roy Powell, and you remember those. He was the guy that I had to go and rescue with the jet boat that time up the the Buller.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's where I met Phyllis, and then she decided she'd like to go to Karamea to have a look. So I took her and another girl. Who was it? Shirley Powell, her name, wasn't she? Married Jim Maris.
They lived along the road from me.
Yeah, and so that started snowballing a bit. So I'd bring a load of timber to Westport and weekend at home. So that's where we met. But in 1954, I then shifted to Westport.
Yeah.
I gave up the timber driving and I shifted to Hardy and Thompson, the sawmill here. And I lived on my own for a while out at Snodgrass. You know where Snodgrass is?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, yeah.
I lived there for a while, but that was well, we both liked it there. And then after about a year, Kevin came along, and it was too tough for Phyllis coming in and out to town. So
coming to town,
we bought a place in Westport. We thought we did.
So when you first met Phyllis, did you know? Did you know? No, when you did you know she was the one?
No, not really. Not really, because I was too busy with that. I wasn't really that much interested in. We didn't seem to have much time with girls, and when we did go, when they came fishing with anything with us like this, and plenty of them did.
Yeah.
They were just treated like another blooming boy, another helper.
Yeah. So
help with the carrying. Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
So that's what happened. So we got married, and then we had two kids, Jennifer and Kevin, out at Snodgrass, and then,
and so. Do you remember the first date you went on with Phyllis? The first real date, not one of your ones where you took her hunting.
Not really, Bruce.
No.
More or less just, again, she was just another part of the works as far as...
a mate.
But she came to Karamea, and we went to ball. That's when we first really we'd go to the farmer's ball or the white boaters ball or something like that.
Weren't they great?
Oh, they were
just awesome. What did you most admire about Phyllis? What was the quality? Because you were married a long, long time.
Of course.
Yeah. What did you most admire about?
She was a bit like me. She liked sport. She got me playing men's hockey, and that was another hardest thing I didn't do. Was men's hockey. Badminton was tough, but men's hockey was tougher.
Was it?
Oh yes. Well, you covered so much ground and far tougher than rugby. But and Phyllis was in so much too. She was in bowling and. Everything, like your mum, they were in everything.
I remember Phyllis well. You know, I don't remember many of the others, but I remember. I remember her.
Well, I mean, she was in everything, and then she fitted in well everywhere. We went to Fiji, and when I went to Fiji to live, she just about ran the place over there.
I love it.
No, that was good.
How long were you married? How many years was it?
Pardon?
How many years were you married? It must have been coming up to 60?
I don't know. She died 3 years ago, and we were married in 1954.
Oh, well.
Do a bit of arithmetic there.
Yeah.
She's been gone 3 years now, and I don't know where those 3 years have gone, but they've gone anyway.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's how it is. Did you ever meet your grandparents? Did you ever meet your grandparents?
My grandparents?
Yeah. Did you meet them?
Did I miss them?
No, meet them. Did you ever see them, talk to them? Did you ever talk to them?
Oh, yes.
What were they like?
Oh, good. All the grandparents were good. I liked Phyllis's grandparents in Westport here too. They were lovely people. The Foxes, they were lovely.
Right.
They were from out the. They had a farm out the Cape between the cement works took it over. It was where the cement works quarry was. That was them. And my grandparents in Karamea were quite good too. Yeah. So.
And did you meet all four?
Pardon?
You met all four of your grandparents? You know, all four of them?
Yes.
You met them all?
Yeah.
Wow.
I see. But oh yes.
Not many people.
Oh yes.
Not many people do that.
They were good. They lived for quite a few years. All of them. Old Billy Fox and Ma Fox down here. They lived quite a long while.
What was your first job where you got paid? I know you've told me it's in the store out there.
My first job...
Tell me about the first job.
Well, when I left school, my first job was at the co-op store.
And that's in Karamea?
That's in Karamea.
Yeah.
Market Cross it was.
Oh, yes?
Yes, that's the same difference though, but it's Market Cross where all the going is there at the moment. And then I was there for about 2.5 years, and then... and while I was working at the co-op store, I worked with a very, very nice lady who used to come there. She was an exclusive brethren, but she was lovely. She didn't stay with her parents in Ewmery. That's on the other. Ewmery's on the other side of the river, by the way, to Arapito.
Yeah, different place.
Yeah, it's a different place. But it wasn't until years later that I found out she was a lovely person, lovely, good-looking. Her name was Ruve Hewson, and the Hewsons lived on the coast road on about the 10 Mile or somewhere along the coast road, and they lived there for years. They were, one of them were there right up until recently. They used to make orchids. That you've probably heard of that.
I've heard of the Hewsons, yeah.
And you couldn't destroy them.
Yeah.
And they took us up there sometime, but they reckon he died with that recipe. It must have had a lot of gelatin in it. It was lovely smelling. Get back to Ruve. It wasn't until a long time later that I found out she was John Britton's mother. And how the hell did that come about? You know John Britton, don't you?
The Britton motorbikes?
Yeah. He was a great guy.
Wow.
Yeah, he not just with motorbikes. He was a brilliant designer. His glasswork and stuff like that was unbelievable. Yeah, well, that was Ruve married Hewson, and then I don't know how the Britton came into it, but John Britton anyway is Ruve's. So that was quite something. But then, Bruce, I went from the co-op store to the sawmill.
Which sawmill?
The Ewry sawmill, top end of Ewry.
Right.
The Harrison Duncan sawmill, they called it then.
Yeah.
It was a steam-driven sawmill.
Yep.
And we carried the logs from up on a mountainside there, the Burma Road they called it. It was very, very steep, extremely steep. And that's where I've learnt to drive on that.
Big remus?
Pardon?
Big remus? Were they remu logs?
Yeah. Yes, it was. Yeah, remu. We only really logged remu, matai, and white pine. That was. There was plenty of it, and that was big.
Yeah.
And then we moved the mill. The mill burnt down. Caught fire one night, so they moved the mill down to Market Cross, then to what they call Baker's Creek, which is only a few hundred yards from the cemetery, if you know where that is.
Yeah, right in the centre of town.
Yep. They called that the terrace mill. And then I was still carting the logs in. I carted them off what they called the South Terrace then. And then while I was logging there, what happened then? Oh, I had to go away. I had to go to the army. I had to go to this silly outfit. There.
No,
We'll cut that one. They sent me those. So I got some medals. But it was a bit of a waste of time, really, wasn't it? But it meant a big disturbance at the mill, because there was 2 or 3 of us had to be away at the same time.
Yeah.
And that didn't work too good, so we had to just shuffle round. And then when I came back, I went on the timber truck. Is it all right?
Yeah, no, it's good. Look, you're going very, very well. You're going good.
I'm yapping a lot, though.
No, it's good. Now, when you were bringing the logs out, did you mill them, or did you just drive the truck? What did you do? When you're at the mill, did you?
You did everything.
Everything?
Yes, you load the truck. We fiddled them a lot of the time too, up on the bush. By fiddling them, we had to. Our trucks didn't have a trailer then.
No.
They were only we were 16 feet long or something like that.
Yep.
We fiddled hand sawed the logs, cut them up and put them on the truck and took them down. You did everything. And that was quite hard work, but it still wasn't the big lifting like the sop was. And then I went on the timber. That was hard work too, because your timber every piece had to be handled. We weren't allowed to slide it onto the truck on greased slides like they did down here at the mill down here.
Yeah.
You greased you slid a bundle on at a time.
Yeah.
We had to do everything by hand. And then when I carted the timber to Seddonville, it all had to be hand loaded into the stupid blooming
railway
wagons, yes, with the timber on the angle.
Yeah.
And then you had to taper the top of it so it could go through the tunnel. So that was hard work. But then I also carted timber to the local builders in Westport here, Nielsen's, H.J. Nielsen's, and there was another company we had here, the Westport Building Company. They were the 2 suppliers here. The reason we did that was Gibbs Transport used to do cart all the timber for all the mills pretty well, but they found out that the costs went up and it was cheaper for them to buy their own truck and carry the timber themselves. Yes, there were 4 main sewer mills then, and that's what happened. So we carried our own timber then, and Gibbs Transport weren't keen on hand loading it into wagons because that was hard work.
Oh,
Yeah.
So you're at Market Cross in that mill, and then did you come to town? Where did you go after the mill in Karamea? You come into Westport?
Did I?
Yeah. Where was your next job?
My next job?
Yep.
Yes. Well, by the way, but the Karamea job was pretty. I'll go back to that just for a minute on the bluff.
Yeah.
That was pretty demanding driving over there. The Karamea bluff in those days was only one way, and it took about most of the timber trucks took about around 3.5 hours, because it was pretty difficult going, and the roads were closed a lot. I slept on the bluff several times. Only once I had to sleep in the truck, but I slept, and there was roadmen's huts along the road. We managed to sleep.
Yeah.
But we were stuck there with the weather, with slips and whatnot. That was pretty tough. But it wasn't much of a change for me changing to come here to Hardy and Thompson's here, up the road here.
Yep.
Yeah, because I was just doing the same thing more or less, but I was doing the mechanicking as well here as well. And
what were Hardy and Thompson's like to work for? Was
good.
It was a big mill, wasn't it?
I'm not going to. The two bosses were a little bit funny, but the father, the main boss, he was a Frenchman actually, Hardy and Thompson. The old man Thompson, he was a nice chap, old Bill Thompson.
Right.
Yeah, he was really good. Oh, Calvin was all right. He was a gunman. He was a gun surfcaster, well known tournament surfcaster. No, I stayed at. I'm not sure how long I stayed at. I stayed there until it closed.
Yeah, you were there.
Yes,
quite a long time.
It closed in about 1968 because I built a caravan and a jet boat out there in that old shed, and the jet boat I built was the first job I did with that, and I hardly finished it. Well, we all know about the 1968 earthquake, of course, but there was knock, knock, knock on the door, and the kids were still very upset here. So was Phyllis. The television was on. We did have TV then. It was on its face there, and all the stuff was out here, and knock, knock on the door. That was my first account with the police. The police came and they said, well, they wanted the boat and me. And I said, well, I've got no show. Look at this. I've got to clean it. Well, we said, we're sorry. They said it doesn't work like that. They said, you've got to come.
You're on your way.
Yeah, so I said, well, the boat's not properly finished. And that didn't work either. They said, is it mobile? I said, yes, like a fool. And I said, then it's got no petrol. And then they said, well, we'll arrange that. So you just come to the lagoon. And I got to the lagoon, and they tipped some petrol in the boat, filled the boat, and told me what I was going to do. They said there were possible fatalities in the Buller Gorge, and I said, which one of you are coming with me? And they said, none of us are coming, we're too busy. So they said, yeah, you're going to take two coal miners, two miners from Heafy's mine. Bill Heafy was one of them, I can't think of the other one's name,
right.
And Jim Colvin. Now, I knew Jim Colvin very well because he was in the parts at Betts's. He must have been in the search and rescue or something, I really don't know, but I knew Jim well, but he came, so three of us went. But,
and where did you go? Did you go all the way to, where were the fatalities? On the slip? Was it on the slip, or was it?
Well, it was just so unbelievable, Bruce. When I got into the gorge, I could see where the river was washed it with the size of the earthquake, and it was shaking all the time. We could feel it in the boat. Apart from that, we could see the stuff coming down off the hillsides when you could see through the fog. See, the problem was there was no other way to get anybody, to transport anybody in the gorge other than on the water. And all they wanted was the boat, was me and the boat.
Yeah.
Because they knew where the accident was. It was Whitecliffs, that's where the house was flattened, and we passed bits of it going down the river. But the only way to get anybody away from there was by water around to where they could get them onto the road, because the road was blocked by slips, and they couldn't get a helicopter in because of the fog. Yeah. The fog was right down, but the helicopter arrived there at the same time as us anyway, and they were all killed 3 days later.
Yeah, they were.
But they weren't cess people. They were linesmen.
Oh.
They had nothing to do with the search and rescue and that, but they stopped to assure us that we were safe. I said, we're never going to get home. When I got as far as Berlin's, I said to the Heafy boys, I said, we're never going to get home because there's no water. The river below the big slip. The guys in the helicopter told me that the bottom of the slip, you could see the bottom of the river, and you know what that's like in the gorge. That would have been deep up in there, but there was no water. It stopped the river full stop.
So how did the boat go?
So the only water we had was from the Kongahu River,
and
a couple of the Mackley, and a couple of, they were only creeks really, So, but it's strange to say, I did get back down, but there you are. So it was unbelievable what was going up. Great huge piece fell off Hawke's Crag, right from way up on top into the river, and I've been through all that before though, Bruce. I won't go into too much because I put a piece in the paper about that.
Yeah.
We passed the chap carrying the bike down the gorge. I don't know how he survived, but that turned out to be Pat Morgan. He walked down the gorge, and when we got to the White Cliffs, the police had arrived there on foot. 2 policemen. I knew them well afterwards too. Charlie Rhodes was one of them. Irene Rhodes was a good badminton player, if you remember rightly.
Yeah, I remember Charlie.
And anyway, Charlie said, well, they've carried the man. They were trying to carry him away, but apparently they banned that anyway. And when the fog lifted, they got a helicopter. But the women she was underneath everything. So that's what happened. So the idea with the Heafy boys, the police said you're going to drop them off at Heafy Creek, which is just above the swing bridge at Berlin's, and they're going to go in and bring a bulldozer out and start clearing the road. They had no idea what the gorge was like. They had no idea at all. And I couldn't give them any idea. I had no radio or anything like that on it. So Bill Heafy, yes, Bill, he lived at Carter's Beach. He got out of the boat and he said, well, I think it's pretty hopeless. The size of the slips and the railway line poking up in the air, it was wrecked. The gorge was wrecked. And just as he got out of the boat, there was a huge shake. Oh, a real monster. And he was in the boat like a shot. He said, I'm not going anywhere. And the other fellow, he didn't even get out of the boat. He hung onto the bar the entire trip, both ways. But it turned out the other Heafy boy, one of his in-laws lived there at that house that was flattened.
Oh, at Whitecliffs. And he survived, did he?
Pardon?
Did he not get killed?
It wasn't. They weren't living there then.
Oh,
okay. No,
okay.
They had. Yeah. So that was that. That was my first encounter with the jet boat, and then of course I don't know whether you should talk about this, but this was the second one this was worse. That one there had no water. The next time I had plenty, heaps of it, because it was that we launched the boat round the shop here in Queen Street. And can you remember the shop, by the way, Queen Street?
Yeah.
Can you remember the fruit shop, the Coleman and Hill shop at the bowling green?
Yeah.
Oh, good on you.
Yeah, and...
you will too, because you lived up there.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't get through there. There was a metre of water on the road. That's where we launched the boat. But I couldn't get over the railway line, and this is where they don't... This is where... I must say this, because this is what... When you're sent on these searches, what people don't realise, it's very dangerous with a jet boat. It's extremely dangerous because you can't see anything under the surface.
Yeah.
And the moment you go off the plane, you're at the mercy of the water.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've sunk down in the water. Well, the other thing is, in Westport, you have to know which side of the railway line you're on, because the whole circle of the railway line is high. I haven't seen the flood over the railway line anywhere. And I drove the boat through the water at the Queen Street shop, and then when I got to the other side, I was left on dry land at the railway crossing, the Queen Street crossing I'm talking about.
Yeah,
so they went, they got a tractor, and the 2 people that were helping worked on Roy Powell's farm. They were Bill Beveridge and Herbie Mitchell. And they got the tractor, and they managed to get the tractor through the water and get the trailer. And then they took me over to the other side of the railway line. And then when we got over the other side of the railway line, we went up to about past the O'Connor home, and we got back into plenty of water again. So I put the boat back in the water again.
It must have been a big flood.
1970, people don't realise that's the last big... The 1970 flood, Bruce, reached the parapet, reached the roof in Hawke's Crag. The roof, it reached the roof. the 1926 flood was 2 metres, 2.4 metres above that.
And that's where the penny's on that pole.
That's the Torks Crag. But the 1970 flood was the last biggest flood we've had. And anyway, and I got up the road as far as where Milne's farm was or something, and then of course the road goes down like that, and there was 20 or 30 feet of water from there on, but we couldn't get the trailer through that, of course, so I had to drive the boat through that with the other men too. And then when we got to the other end, the Organs Island, they call it, is surrounded by bush.
Yeah.
So we had to find a gap in the bush to get it in, and then we were heading into the main Buller River, which was not very nice. But we had to drag the boat across the paddock a short distance, 20 or 30 yards or maybe a bit more, and then put it into the river. And then Keith Powell, Roy Powell's father, Roy Powell was his father,
yeah,
he came with me, but he was extremely upset. Everything on the island had drowned. I don't know how many dozens or even probably 100 head of cattle. There were only 2 things alive, and that was Roy Powell and the horse. The horse was tied to the tree, and Roy Powell was sitting up to about his knees. It was up to about the belly of the horse. But and here comes another problem with a jet boat in a flood. You've got to know which side of the fences you're on, and the fences were submerged. And the only way I could see where the fences were by the disturbance in the water. But if you get on the top side, you're in deep trouble.
Yeah.
You've only got to get washed down against that, and you're like all the cattle, your history.
Yeah.
And that's how the cattle drown. They wash down against the fence, they drown, and then the weight of the water, probably a lot of them, pushes them away. He had 4 dogs, and he had lost those. This is by the time when I finally arrived at the horse. But then what do you do when you arrive at the horse in a raging current like that? Timber and stuff going down the river beside you, and a terrified horse, just the whites of its eyes showing, and I couldn't pull alongside the horse because it kept shying away, but it couldn't kick me. That was the only thing I had in my favour, the whole outfit. But the moment I dropped off the plane to stop there, I had to use a lot of throttle, and I was worried about the engine stopping because I had to use a lot of revs. When you drop off the plane, you're then at the mercy of the strength, you know that.
Goes wherever it wants to take you.
They wanted to tie the boat to the tree, and I wasn't having that on because that's how you drown a boat pretty quick. If you tie it to something and something comes and hits it or something like that, I wanted the control. So what I did, I came round behind the horse, and it couldn't really see what was going on because he was sitting on it. And he wouldn't take his gumboots off for a start, but I wouldn't.
So Roy was on the horse?
He was on the horse. Yes, he was still on it.
Wow.
So I came up behind the horse with a lot of power on. I brought the boat right up to its tail. I was touching its tail with the nose of the boat.
Yep.
And I said to him, well, I couldn't help because I was full-time driving the boat.
Yeah.
But I said to Keith, you get him to slide back the back of the horse, slide back. And he slid back on the back of the horse, and he dropped over he wasn't going to get kicked, as I said, because it was underwater. So he slid back over the bum of the horse onto the front of the boat, and Keith put a rope round him. And then the next thing, I knew jolly well that the next big trouble was going to come. How was I going to get back into where we'd come out into the river? Because the river was so swift. You couldn't just come along and drive in there to the edge of the bank, get swept under the trees because of bush on each side. Yeah. You'd get swept straight underneath the trees. So what I did, I went down the river and came back up with a fair bit of throttle on, and I came back up, and I'd already looked at the bank. It was only about 18 inches, the paddock was only about, mightn't have been quite even 18 inches above the water level. Yeah. So I came up and then shot in and drove the nose of the boat right up where the other fellows could grab it. Because,
up onto the bank.
Yes, but the problem was it's just like the tube race. There's going to be an accident there too. We've had some pretty near drownings up here. You're all right when you're in the water, Bruce, but when you get under those trees up there...
Yeah, it's hard work. So, if the 1970 flood happened now, what was the result?
The 1970 flood happened now, yep. I wouldn't like to say what would happen because it's going to be like Arapito. They'll tell you what happened in Arapito with the last big flood they had. It came down the Arapito Valley like they reckon there were waves in it because all the farms have been cleared. there's no swamps, there's no flax, there's no bush. Up the gorge up here, when it comes through at Arches, it's going to come down through the farms now at a great rate of knots. I had to go onto the riverside of the railway line. I didn't go into Sergeant's Hill area to rescue those people. Tangles Neil did, and they had to put his boat on rollers and put it over the railway line to get into the other side.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't like to think what would happen now. The Arches places, the overflow, whatever you like to call it,
yeah,
is completely grown over. But that doesn't matter. The farms have all been cleared round it. There'd be just a great.
It's going to happen.
I wouldn't like to think what would happen. There was another big flood, 1972 or 73. There was a fairly big one too, but it wasn't as big as the 1970. I've got the records of that, the West Coast records, and that's where it was. It reached the parapet, and that was big, and that was in the houses round past. What's his name? The weightlifting fella, Taskers, and Frank Fox, the railway car driver.
You remember?
Rail car driver.
I remember Taskers.
Those houses were submerged, but we went up Queen Street and what's straight up anyway.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we managed. We got him all right. We got him okay. He was Phyllis's uncle, and rolling in money. Had a butcher shop in Brome Street.
Oh, you had to look after him.
I went to the police and asked them when they're going to fix me up, and they said Mr. Powell's going to do that. So one day he waved me down, and he called me in at the butcher shop. I was biking to work. He gave me a $10 note.
Oh, he did not. Did he really?
Phyllis never spoke to him again, I don't think. But anyway.
Oh, so what happened after Hardy and Thompson's?
Pardon?
Where did you go after Hardy and Thompson? Yeah, what happened after that?
I went to Tronga Bay sawmilling, but then I hadn't been at Tronga Bay sawmilling long, and a fella called me down to the Workmen's Club playing pool down there one night, and they called me over to the bar, and they called me. He said, "There's a chap over there from Fiji wants to speak to you." And I said, "Never ever heard of Fiji, Hardy. I don't even know where it is."
What part of?
And he said, "Oh, he wants to talk to you."
Yeah.
And then anyway, I said, "No, I don't know anybody in Fiji." But anyway, I did get over, and he said, "Oh, would you like a job up here?" And I said, "Are you joking?" But anyway, I said, "No." I said, "I've never been away from home or anything like that." I said, I don't want it. But anyway, the next Friday night, after I'd come home and spoke to Phyllis and other people, they said, "You're crazy. Why didn't you jump at it?" And anyway, the next Friday night, Kevin Slee came across again. He said, "That fella's on the phone again." I just about broke my leg getting over there.
And whereabouts in Fiji did you go?
They flew me up to Fiji to show me the job.
Yeah, whereabouts? Was it in?
It was in the Upper Island, Vanuatu, on the top island.
Oh, yeah.
And the first year we went to a lovely little place called Savasavu. It was only a small population, but it was a lovely little place. And the second year I went up to the top side of the island, which is a hot side where the trouble is now, is Lumbasa.
Yep.
That was a town of about 10,000. Savasavu only had about 2,000 or something like that. But now, I think the what do you call it? The yachting thing. What do you call that? You know, where they've got a big yachting a marina.
Oh yeah, yeah.
100 million. Oh. Just across from where we live, the Americans have just built a 100 million marina.
It might not be there now.
So
after that big cyclone that's been through.
It didn't affect them there.
Oh.
At Savasavu was all right.
Yeah.
But the one daughter, Jennifer, came with me. No, Jennifer didn't. Rosalie came with us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, she had a ball up there. The big liners, the Pacific Star, and all these great huge liners, you come right into near the front of the house. It's very deep water. Oh, not that they, when I say they were out a bit, but the big liners. They were making that film Love Boat. Can you remember the film?
Yeah.
Love Boat? They were making that while we were there. All the girls Rosalie had a great time. So no, we loved it in Fiji. I only had a 2-year contract, but we stayed just a little bit over. And then I came back and went back to Tronga Bay.
Right. And
I worked there until they closed. And then I was past my retirement. I was 50, had my 50th birthday.
Were you there when the dam broke up the back?
Pardon?
Were you there when the dam broke in behind?
Yes, I was.
mill?
And I got left stranded there too. I was marooned. I was welding on the bucket of a loader, and and when I looked around, there was nobody about. They'd all gone. They'd all ran out to the main road.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was left in at the mill. So anyway, yeah. Well, you can remember that, can you?
Well, I was the electrician out there.
Of course, I wasn't working. I wasn't working for the Kongahu crowd that your father was when he got badly injured. I was working for the Hardy and Thompson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So were you at the watermill?
Yeah. I worked at the watermill before they did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they took over the watermill afterwards.
Yeah. So
that was Tronga Bay. That was the actual Tronga Bay. That was Dixon's, I think, or somebody like that from out Tronga Bay started that off.
Yeah, and then the mill, the watermill closed, didn't it? And then they moved into just out of the crossroads there.
Yeah, yeah.
So did you work there?
Yeah.
You were there, weren't you?
That's where I did. That's where I spent most of the time. I was mainly the engineer there, mainly.
Yeah.
But I did drive as well, and I don't know how. And then one night I went round the shop round here, and there's a chap I'd seen around going past here occasionally, a bit of a strange fella. He was I knew he was one of the exclusive brethren, and he tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "Are you Royce Smith?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "You know a bit about sawmilling?" And I said, "Yes, a little bit." So he said he'd bought this mill from America, that's portable band mill. And he said, "It's sitting out there, nobody knows anything about it." So he said, "You interested?" And I retired then, but I did. I went and had the best 2 years, great 2 years working. I quite enjoyed it. Yeah, put the thing together, it was marvellous.
Yeah. So the mills, you've seen a lot of people hurt in the mills, haven't you?
Huh?
There's been a lot of people hurt and killed in the mills in the bush over the years.
How many were killed?
Yeah, a lot of people, wasn't there?
Yes, there was quite a few.
Yeah.
There was, Phyllis's father got killed at, and he only fell off the roof where they pulled the logs into the mill. He got up to repair the guttering on the mill, but it was rotten, and he tipped off, and he only fell about 6 feet, but he landed on the back of his head. I wasn't there, but they said he didn't move. He just killed him. And then the young boy, what was his name, from Charleston, he was going home. The flax mill was down here then, and he on his motorbike, and he slid under. But that wasn't really a mill accident, was it? He slid under the mill.
Yeah.
But then Fred Champion got killed up in the bush when they fell a tree on him and hit him on top of the head, and that killed him. And what else?
There was a lot like my dad that had logs fall on them, wasn't there?
Pardon?
Like my father had a log fall on him and crushed his legs, and
who?
My dad.
Oh yes, the log. Yes, the log came off the. I remember that.
What happened there?
Well, we were actually carting logs from that area. We were carting logs. Hardy and Thompson. We were carting. No, not Hardy and Thompson. It's from the bay.
Yeah.
They were carting logs from Bullock Creek.
Yep.
Because we were carting logs from Bullock Creek at the time that.
Bill Kearns.
Hey?
Bill Kearns had it, didn't he?
Yeah.
He did. He was up Bullock Creek.
When they all got killed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was down a bit different. We were we're in a different direction to. We were upstream from them.
Yep.
Yeah, but we're about that time. Yeah. So you know, I moved around a bit with the sawmilling, all right. But the Fiji was outstanding.
So, Royce, how are things different today, do you think, for the young people than they were when you were a young man?
Oh, I don't think you get many people to do what we were doing nowadays. There was a big difference. There's a lot of difference. I'll tell you what, there was a big difference in Bruce, and this is why it was the safety. We had no early safety gear, but we weren't the only ones. There were a lot of people who didn't have that sort of thing. No, they wouldn't be doing it, Bruce, because it's all mechanised now. They'd be pushing buttons, computerised.
Yeah, they'd be
doing
this.
That's right. So it's totally different.
Now tell me about your badminton years. You've played with people like, look, I interviewed Basil Climo recently.
Yeah,
that's right. It was funny. He's a funny man.
Yeah, we got around a lot with that badminton. We went to South Westland that you didn't go, I don't think, a couple of... Ray Pearson drove us down there. We used to go down to
Francie Graham.
Well down there anyway. Yeah. And no, we got round a bit. Oh, you did, I suppose, too.
Yeah, we did.
Christchurch and Harry and so on.
Yeah.
When I came to Westport here, there's some pretty good badminton players, but I don't know whether they're as good as what you were, but there were some pretty good ones. Alec Gregg and Amy Henderson, she wasn't married then. That was in the Army Hall.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the first place that I first started, was in the Army Hall.
The roof was a bit short, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, the badminton shuttle we got through the rafters, wasn't it? And then we went to the Holland Hall, remember?
Yes, I do.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, no.
No, that might have been the old Theatre Royal.
I remember the Holland
Where
Hall.
the brewery is now. You may not have played there.
No, I didn't play up there, but I know that when it was great.
You'd have been playing. You'd have been playing the Theatre Royal, wouldn't you? Pat Hill was playing there. You know, Pat Rubo now.
Yeah.
Yeah, she played there in the. Oh, you may not.
Might have been
no, you and I used to play ourselves to death, and I'll always remember those showers after those gas showers.
And you would never give up. That used to annoy me. You know, you just.
Oh, you got too good for me though.
You know,
you got way ahead of me in the end.
That's only because I was so young.
They were good days. I enjoyed those badminton days. We made some great friends, and didn't a lot couple up, didn't they? A lot of them. Yeah. You know, there was a lot got married through that.
Oh, Jenny and I met at badminton.
Did you meet at badminton?
Yeah.
Did you really?
I only went to go to meet the boys though.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, you see, Claudie, but of course, sadly, some of them are dead, aren't they? And some split up. Who did Len mention? No. Oh, he married Anne Marion. No, they didn't split up. She died.
Right.
She died young. And the other one, that Claudie Walsh was married to Jan Struthers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she got cancer, didn't she? She lost her hair. She died. Anne Havel and Howard split up, though. And
Risky? What was her name? Risk? That lived out at Snodgrasses. Jimmy Risk? Risk.
Right?
Jimmy Risk.
Jimmy Risk?
Yeah, they played badminton, didn't they?
Did Jimmy play? Oh, that was
his wife?
That was his wife.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
what was her?
I can't remember her name.
Come on. Yes, you do. Rhonda Burgess. Rhonda was another one. She married Rhonda. Yeah, what was her name? Yes, Jimmy Risk was. Yeah, he didn't play, but she did.
She did.
Cheryl.
Cheryl it was too.
Yeah,
and there was Kathy.
Jeez, I'm hopeless with me.
Oh no, we're doing well. What about there was Kathy Finn?
Who?
Kathy Finn.
Yeah, Kathy Finn.
Yeah, she played.
She's a hobo, isn't she?
Oh, we just passed
I got a
her.
bit of a shock when they said you're going to hospital in Christchurch. You're going in the morning.
Yeah.
And the next thing, then they said you're going by car and you're going to catch a bus when you get to Greymouth. And the person that come and picked me up was Kathy Finn. And I said to Kath, "Oh, you're pretty good at." Oh, yes, she said, I love it. She said, I've been to Christchurch and that. We were pretty close. We were running pretty close to time.
Yeah.
And we also got stuck. She drove really well. She was really good. She drove me down there, but the bus that they picked me up in, this bus they said they were going to get picked up in, it was a Mercedes-Benz ambulance. And it was absolutely brilliant. And I was pretty crook. I was down to about 7 stone.
Yeah.
And the driver, I couldn't believe it. I laid back there. They strapped me in like in a blimmer. I was going to Mars or somewhere. I was all strapped in the back. And then he got in this big automatic. Oh, it was marvellous. And they took me we went from there to, and I didn't know this, at Arthur's Pass. He backed in there and they've got a room there that you go into. It's just like a hospital, just like the hospital room. They back in and you can go in. And I had to have treatment. They got the oxygen, everything's there, just like in a hospital ward. Wow. And just backs, yes, they back in and it goes right into it. And he said, well, we're doing the same thing at Springfield because you've got to be treated all the time. I was blowing up all the time. And anyway, but when we got to, is it Springfield? Is the first place when you get on the other side?
Springfield.
It doesn't matter.
Yes.
It was one of them anyway.
Sheffield was
the first
Springfield.
one.
Yeah.
When we got there, the nurse came back to me. I was right in the back. She came back and she said, well, how do you feel? And I said, pretty good, I'm loving it. And she said, well, do you feel like going straight on? Because she said, we've got a big day ahead of us. And I said, yes, that'll do me. So we went straight to Christchurch. Wow. And then I got unloaded into the emergency ward or whatever it was. I'm looking away, aren't I?
No, you didn't.
Yes, and I was put in the ward, and a lot of them were pretty upset there because it was where they took all the people that got shot in that shooting, and anyway, that was the ward that I was put into anyway, and the next day they said, well, you're too old for it, you're getting a bit older and you're a bit weak for an anaesthetic, so we'll just give you a mild sedative or something. It wasn't terribly, I could feel the thing, well, I could sense it going down, but then they did a bit of poking and shoving, and then what happened then? I saw their faces. They looked at one another, and I knew jolly well that something had gone wrong, and they'd poked a hole in my blooming stomach, and actually they poked two. It went out through the bottom as well, and they tried to staple it, but then oh no, they put me out to do that, but that ran out of anaesthetic. I don't know, but I didn't go back to the ward. That night I had another big operation, and they tried to seal it, and then my mouth was sealed for 7 days, and I was trying to drag the skin in the back of my throat. Nothing went down my mouth for 7 days. I had to go to another operation and get a hose shoved up here into my heart or something, and that's where I got fed by. And it's absolutely ridiculous, honestly. And then when I did get well enough to do the gallstone, oh, that was really painful. But they didn't try going down here again. They cut a big hole around behind my liver here, and they shoved that camera around behind here, and they also put a drain pipe in there. They shoved the camera around behind here, and then I could see the screen, and I could see these blue lines going across, and then they'd go like that, and that's when it was real painful. That's when they jabbed it. But then, but I got over that. I got over that all right. And then when I got back to the ward that night, around midnight or something, I wanted to go to the loo, and of course I wasn't drinking anything. The fluids and that were going through here. I was getting fed through here. And I went to go to I started swelling up, and I thought, oh God, what's happened now? They blocked my bladder.
Oh no!
So another operation. They had to unblock that, but that wasn't too bad. But it was painful before I managed to get the joker. And he came, and I thought he was a fellow bushman. He was a hard shot. They had to go and get him from somewhere. He was a surgeon, though. And he was great. He made a good job anyway. And so that was that. And then, of course, I had a visit from the hospital boards, and God knows what they said. They were very upset about it all, and they didn't want me to. Didn't want me to carry on and make a fuss or anything. Rock
the boat?
I'm too sick to be worried much about that anyway.
Oh dear.
But anyway, then they said, well, how do you want to go? They said, after all you've been through, how do you want to go back to Westport? You can say how you want to go home. And they said, well, there's already an ambulance left the coast. They didn't say it left Westport or Karamea. They just said there's an ambulance left the coast. We want you to get on it at 2 o'clock because Christchurch Hospital was getting pretty upset with all this COVID thing, There's a lot of restrictions and things there. So anyway, at 2 o'clock, sure enough, the ambulance arrived, and the driver walked in the door with the trolley to strap me down, and it was the same guy that took me from Karamea. And they said, I thought I was going to go to Westport. And he said, you are. He said, that's where I'm taking you, to Westport. He said, we'll drive from Westport back to Karamea. So,
that's good.
So
that's really good.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yes, but we got to where, I don't know, Colverton or somewhere, and we had to get out, and we all went to the toilet there, but that was a public co-op. As I said, we struck the rationing. You didn't know anything about that. You had to have coupons to buy butter, and you could only get half a pound of butter sometimes. You had to cut the butter in half because you'd run out of, the coupons had run out. You were only allowed 4 gallons of petrol a month, I think it was.
Gosh,
you had to have coupons for that. Yes, but I struck the orders, going round and collecting the orders, and the lady would say, well, when you get down to that lady down there, she's giving me half her butter coupon, and I'm going to have half her tobacco coupon. Oh, look, I don't know how to survive. I honestly don't. And then it was all the money that they were giving me, because a lot of these people couldn't get up to town, and they were giving you, in those days, it was all sterling. There was no digital stuff. But anyway, I must tell you about this. I was carting this day. The wheat was in a bushel, and a bushel of wheat was about 30 or 40 pounds or something. We had to put it in a brown paper bag, and I always put wheat in 2 bags, because if it got a bit, and then you had to tie it with string.
Yeah.
And of course, here I was carting this across Southerly's paddock, and a 25 or 50 pound of flour or whatever under this arm, and the old sheep decided to bowl my head over turkey.
Oh.
And when I got into Mrs. Southerly, well, I'm sorry, Mrs. Southerly, you're going to have to send the chooks down the paddock when they want their wheat, because I ain't going down there to pick it up.
Well, was he a real mean one?
Hey?
Was he quite mean?
What?
The ram?
Oh, yeah, he was quite big, or he knocked your legs clean out from under you. He was big. He was a proper coward, though. Yeah, so I watched him. But there was a dog the same. There was a dog up at Arapito, used to always charge out at me after I'd delivered the groceries. He'd charge out and grab you by the ankle. So the old Bedford had a winder, what do you call it, a crank handle.
Yeah.
So I decided to tuck that under my arm. And I took it in there, and this is Mrs. Allen. They're pretty prim and proper people. But anyway, I took it in, and I thought, well, if dog comes out this time, he's going to meet a bit of opposition. I thought I'd killed it. It screamed, it yelled. I took off that way, and it took off this way anyway. But I didn't kill it, but I gave it an awful whack. But we all, a lot of us got bitten, and a bloody magpie. Sorry, have you got that on? Sorry.
Of course I've got it on. I never, you know what I want.
If you run into those magpies, I didn't think they had them in Karamea. They blooming swoop at you. And I had a sort of a balaclava thing, beret thing on there. It knocked it off. I think it might have clawed it and tried to take it, but it knocked it off my head.
They're vicious, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're real vicious.
They're vicious.
What's the biggest deer you ever shot?
Pardon?
How many pointer stag? What was the biggest one you got?
The biggest stag?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not too sure. I didn't used to shoot many stags, Bruce.
Yeah.
They're too strong. I didn't like to eat them. Actually, I was a little bit frightened of the stags, actually.
Yeah.
Because, especially in the roaring season, they're a bit dangerous. No, we used to shoot the doe. But my dad, he used to go into the back of the hills for head hunting. For big heads. He got a couple of quite big ones. But a lot of them went more for regularity, rather than the number of points.
Right.
I liked an even group, an even, yeah. So there you are. So the nurse said to me, well, I'm going to take you for a walk for a little while, because the driver has to fumigate because we've all been out in
the COVID.
Yeah, we had to fumigate the ambulance, and then when we got back, and he sprayed us all, and then it was like heaven. I came back here to Westport, and
it's great.
We couldn't get in.
Now, Royce, we're coming to the end of this interview. Can you tell me, where are we going to meet for your 100th birthday? Because I'd like to be there.
Well, my 100th?
Yeah.
Oh, cut it
Well,
out.
you're only 90 now.
Cliff and I both thought we'd been gone long ago, and the 2 girls would be doing all the talking about us.
Yeah.
And the 2 girls, we were both going to get married on Labour weekend 1954.
Right.
And Cliff was marrying Joan Prestige, and if you'll remember right, Jenny, Tom Prestige got cancer in the throat. And they thought he was going to die. So they got married before us. But the 2 girls died 2 days apart.
Oh.
Phyllis and Joan died of cancer, though, and Phyllis had a hell of a death down here in Greymouth. Terrible. And she burst. Charger Allen. Did you know a joker by the name of Charger Allen?
No,
Good sports joker in Westport. Oh, you must have. He played cricket and all sorts.
Yeah.
She bled internally. She was suffering with intestinal trouble. A disease called diverticulitis. You've heard of it then. Pulp sort of things on the intestine.
Yeah.
Well, they burst, and the fluids, instead of going through the intestine, went into her insides going down the coast down here.
Yeah.
Charger Allen, George Allen, big strong joker.
Oh, I know who you mean. I know Charger Elm. Yeah, I do.
He died going to, they were taking him from Karamea to Christchurch. And he died in the ambulance on the way.
Yeah.
But Phyllis didn't think she was going to die. She was laughing and joking with the ambulance drivers here in Westport. Yeah, we should have shut that door. You're cold, and I am too. So anyway, that's what happened, Bruce. So we got back to the Buller Hospital, and oh, this is marvellous. I'm back home again after way over a month, and the lady said, "Well, we can't get in," and I said, "What's happened?" And she said, "We can't get anyone on the phone." They'd had an emergency, and they were dealing with the emergency. But it was only about 10 or 15 minutes. It was no big deal. But they wheeled me into this room. Oh, let me go on just a little bit further, because something I must tell you. They wheeled me into this big room down at the hospital, and after being in Christchurch, I was crammed in. I could touch the lady next to me. We could touch one another. 2 nurses couldn't go in there together alongside us. But anyway, I couldn't walk. I got so weak, and after all that, I had to have help to go to the showers and that. And I had a little Korean girl that was looking after me. And one night when she picked me up from the shower, she said, "I want to show you something." She said, "Is your wife in the next bed to you?" And I said, "No, she's been dead for 3 years." And she said, "Well, come and show you. I'll show you something." So I went round to the board that they have, the hospital board, at the start of the ward where all the names are. I was right down the end, Mr. R. Smith. Right next to me, this lady, she was pretty sick. She was dying, actually. She was right next to me. She was Mrs. P. Smith. So when I got back when the little girl got me back to the ward, and this lady next door, I could talk to her, but only just because she was failing bad. I said to her, "What was your maiden name?" And she said, "Phyllis." And I've got, and then I said to the little girl, I said, "Can I go back and get a photo of it?" And she said, "I don't think you're allowed to." She said, "If you might, you can't go on your own anyway." And no, she said, "I don't think you're allowed to." So, but one of the girls took a photo. I've got it on the computer there. Yeah, so there was Mr. R. Smith, Mrs. P. Smith, same name.
Wow.
She died though while I was there. So there, well, that's life. And I got back into this big board down the Buller Hospital, and here's all these beautiful big paintings done by the Joker from over the bridge at Karamea, the Joker Paul Garlic.
Yeah.
You've seen the paintings.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Of the waterfalls and that up, the Mangatini Falls and that up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was great. So then I started to come right a bit then. It was a guy in Graham then. I was going down and down and down. There was a chap, an old fella from, I can't think of his name now, the doctor from Greymouth that found out what was wrong. They were actually treating me for the wrong thing. They were treating me for a kidney problem. And it was a gallstone blocking a bile duct. Oh, it was terrible. I would blow up with wind. I couldn't get rid of it. And I put up with that for 5 months. I didn't have any summer last summer. So now water weather hasn't been terribly good here, but I hope I haven't. I haven't.
You've been absolute. Look, I've interviewed. As I said, I've done over 2,500 interviews, and this one's been piece of cake. Piece of cake. It really is.
Oh, and I could have gone on a lot. There's a lot of other things happened I wasn't all good. I wasn't a good boy all the time.
Well, as you know, nor was I. Well, look, Coasters, this is Royce Smith, and we've had the pleasure of an hour or so's interview. He's 90 next week, or no, June, isn't it? In June, he's 90. He's someone I've known for years and years. Great badminton player. He has brilliant sense of humour, and you'll see this played on a series of interviews on the Coasters Club. It's also on our YouTube channel, and I'm going to get Royce and his family a memory stick with the full interview as well, because this is one of the best ones I've ever done. Royce, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, I've enjoyed it. So I'd like to keep going. I'd like to tell you what I'm doing now. But
I'll come back.
Well, if you want an example, I went to the shop on the scooter before, and I got down there and I thought, well, I took the note of what I needed here. I got down there and I thought, well, I got that. That's funny. I think I got that stuff yesterday. And when I got down there, it was yesterday's note I'd taken. The day, but I was still here.